I want you to turn to Matthew chapter 12 and verse 40. A long time ago, I had really no understanding about this question. I guess the first question I'm going to ask today is, did Christ go to hell? Did Christ go to hell? And there's some reasons for the fact that he went to hell, if he went to hell. I want to kind of explore that question for just a moment. There's a couple questions I want to kind of look at. But let's look at this for just a moment. Matthew chapter 12 and verse 40 says, "For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." Now, that's going to be key here when we look at this, the heart of the earth. Okay, so let's remember that as we look at this. Now, let's go to Jonas chapter 2 and verse 1. It's interesting, and I don't know about you, but when I see something in the so-called New Testament, okay, if I see a statement like I see here in Matthew, and I want to kind of understand what's being talked about here, then I basically go and see what was quoted from and kind of look at theirs, because usually you're going to find something in context here. And this is what we have here in verse 1. It says, "Then Jonah prayed unto the Lord his God out of the fish's belly, and said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me. Out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou hearest my voice." Notice here the connection here now. As the Lord said, 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly. Here Jonah makes reference to the belly of hell. Okay? So we have a connection to the heart of the earth and hell. And that word hell there is translated from the Hebrew Sheol, which means the world of the dead, or Hades, the underworld. Okay? So there's where we see this connection. Now, the key issue here of Christ going to hell, the heart of the earth, is his resurrection was that his death would be sufficient to atone for sin and therefore conquer death and hell. Okay? Let's go to Revelation chapter 1 and verse 17. This following passage, John sees the risen Christ, who declared he had the keys to death and hell. This leads us to believe that during this time in the heart of the earth, hell, he secured by his atoning death the power and the authority to have possession of those keys. He did not have possession of those keys prior to that. Okay? So, let's go to Revelation 1:17. He says, "And when I saw him," this is Christ, "I fell at his feet as dead. And he laid his right hand upon me, saying, Fear not, I am the first and the last. I am he that liveth and was dead. Behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen." Excuse me. "And have the keys of hell and of death." That's why Christ went to hell. He suffered the plight of a lost man. God turned his back on him. He went into the heart of the earth, the belly of hell, and he conquered death and hell and gained the keys thereof. So That is the purpose of that. Now let's go to illustrate that. Let's go to Matthew 27, verse 45. The great thing about this is that Jesus Christ suffered everything that you would have suffered as a lost individual ending up in hell. And that's great news, man. Mm-hmm. He accomplished that for me.
Amen.
And a lot of people don't realize this. And another thing too, when it comes to people that they are insecure about salvation and they're insecure about their ability, of being able to get to heaven. What Jesus Christ accomplished for you there is so powerful. It seems silly that somebody would think that God would not be able to sustain you and get you to heaven, that you could lose your salvation. It seems silly to me. But anyway, here I want to see from this passage here, he did suffer God turning his back on him here for that period of time. In verse 45, he says, "Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," that is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" Up to this point, he had been in complete, total union with God the Father. But God the Father, at this moment, I believe, was placing the sin of the entire world, past, present, and future, on Christ, allowing him to bear that sin. I can't think right offhand the actual passage in Corinthians which said he made him to be sin for us. That's what's going on right here. And God the Father turns his back on Christ and allows him to bear that burden at that moment. That's what's going on here. All right? This is what happens to a lost person that dies in that state. God has basically turned his back on him. There's no more hope for him there. So he is experiencing that hopelessness here. Let's go to Psalms chapter 63 and verse 9. You'll have to forgive me here. I get to where I talk and that stuff comes up and I can't hardly.
You got the Clintwood bug.
The Clintwood bug, yeah. Yeah. Psalms chapter 63 and verse 9. This is a psalm that is a future telling of what is basically taking place here after the death of Christ. It's almost as if Christ himself, you're seeing his thoughts here. And it says, "But those that seek my soul to destroy it shall go into the lower parts of the earth." So notice the connection here of him being forsaken and the lower parts of the earth. I want us to now go to Luke chapter 16 and verse 22. That passage in Psalms is connected to describing the nature of hell and the lower parts of the earth. All right? We're going to take a look just a moment into that place. The Lord, by inspiration, gives us a little glimpse into this hell, or this Hades, as it were. "And it came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried, and lifted up his eyes being in torments, seeing Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom." Now what I'm going to try to do is draw a picture here illustrating the way the scriptures lays this out. There's a place called hell, and it's in the lower parts of the earth. The whole thing is referred to as hell or Sheol, the underworld, okay? And over here we have Abraham's bosom or paradise, and over here we have this idea of hell or a place of torment, okay? and there's a great gulf fixed between the two, so that Lazarus, being over here, could look over and see these people, and the rich man who's over in hell could look over and see people in Abraham's bosom. And I'm not even sure if he even understood there was a gulf there, because he goes on to say here, this man cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me. Send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. A couple things I want to illustrate from that is this man no longer has his physical body, but his soul is still able to feel and acknowledge feeling of heat, torment. Okay, so just because you don't have a body, you know, your body is connected with all these nerves and things that has feeling. Your soul still can feel stuff. Okay, but notice he had a feeling of wanting to be, his tongue was tormented. He wanted some water. And then Abraham said, Son, remember that thou in thy lifetime receivest thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted, and thou art tormented. And besides all this, between us and you, there is a great gulf fixed, so that they which would pass from hence to you cannot, neither can they pass to us that would come hence. So there was something here that they couldn't pass from one from another. There's a gulf and so forth. Also, too, from this story, Lazarus the rich man didn't go to hell because he was rich. It most likely, if you look at this context of the story, he rejected the truth. He was a wealthy man and basically thought that his wealth and his privilege would get him there rather than the truth. Okay, and the Lord kind of dealt with this. In fact, the Apostle Paul would have been someone kind of like this individual.
Mm-hmm.
But he got saved on the road to Damascus. He met the Christ, the true Lord. But anyway, Lazarus, though he obviously he was saved and followed whatever the doctrine was for that day, he just was a man that was in poverty. He didn't have some of the nicer things of life. He ends up dying, and guess what? He ends up in paradise. So this is the idea that the Scriptures paints when he says hell of the underworld. There was a place called paradise, and this place that's referred to as hell. I think Tim brought this out I believe it was last week, that when Christ resurrected, he emptied this place and took it up into heaven. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, and that's a whole other thing. I don't have time to deal with that today.
Oh, come on.
But the gulf is representative of a separation or chambers or rooms in the lower parts of the earth that would need keys to access. Now, someone would say, look, the earth is full of rock, and then there's this magma down there. Look, it's a spiritual place, okay? It's a spiritual place, and if God wants it in the lower parts of the earth for right now, hey, it's in the lower parts of the earth. The lake of fire, I'm not even sure where that's going to be located.
That magma spewing out of the earth might be part of the lake of fire. Who knows?
It's very well possible. But God can constrain spirits in an area if He wants to. He constrained Abraham here for a period of several thousand years, and they had that place in the Old Testament passages was a place of peace, a place of rest. Obviously, whatever was going on, they didn't feel the heat over here as these people did. Okay, mm-hmm. But there was a separation of rooms. Therefore, because of that, because Christ suffered death and hell, He conquered them both and gained control of the keys of both places. Hell itself is only this place here, just for your understanding, is only a temporary place. It's a temporary place so that until these people are judged and would be cast into a lake of fire, as it's referred to. All right, and that will be the final destination for those that rejected God's plan. Now, these people here, people today that die and end up in this place, the reason they're there is because they reject the gospel of Christ. It's that simple. It's not because so much they're bad people. It's that they've rejected their only way to pay for their sins. People that ended up here under the law, they rejected circumcision, and they rejected the priesthood and the atonement for sin on the face of the earth at that time. Okay? So, that being said, let's go now to Revelation chapter 20 and verse 10. And you know, some people scoff at this, that there's a hell, that there could be a lake of fire. I mean, they scoff at that. You know, all we got to do is look at our sun. Now, eventually our sun will probably burn out. But you know, scientists have looked at stars, and they see that there's a molten lava of sun that they think could burn forever, literally, just because of the stuff. But look at our sun. I don't know how long our sun has been burning, but it has been burning for a long time. And so, I mean, it's no stretch for me to believe that God could make a lake of fire that would last forever. Okay?
You know the sun is a star.
Huh?
The sun is a star.
Yeah. Did I not say that?
I just wondered if you knew.
Well, I do now. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Very
I learned
informative.
that about him last week.
Very informative.
Thank you.
But you know, folks, there are people that don't believe there is a hell. They don't believe that that God could have a lake of fire. I choose to believe God in this respect. And the other aspect of that is I'm thankful for His death, burial, and resurrection that saves me from this place. Okay? That's, you know, there's a hell to be missed. And thank God we come to the realization, you know, one day I'd come to the realization, if I didn't trust this gospel, I would end up in this place, and then ultimately in the lake of fire.
You know, and also there's this group of people out there that actually believes that there is a hell. They just don't believe that this loving God that we speak of will allow them to wind up there.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That's true. And they only, and somehow in their mind, they see people like Charles Manson are the only people that live that kind of place. You know, just bad people.
Just murderers.
But we're all bad.
Yeah.
Pertaining, you know, when we look at it in that respect. Now, the great thing about this passage here is looking for, did you know that this place was created for Satan and his angels? It was never intended for human beings to end up there. But because of Satan and his, we're going to look at this a little bit, but because of Satan, this place was created, and here's the purpose for it. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth, heaven, fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead that were in it, and death and hell were delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged every man according to their works. All right, now let me just say here for just a moment, what I'm trying to get across here is this. On that cross in AD 33, we talked about how that Christ felt forsaken. God placed, as He's hanging there on that cross, He bore our sin. Okay? He accomplished in His body He bore our sin, our works, our wicked works, and all of those things, okay? And he became forsaken and went into the lower parts of the earth for that purpose, okay? And notice these people here, it's saying that there will be a time yet future. All these people will be brought up and judged according to their works, okay? The reason that these people here and the reason that I'm not going to be there is because here in AD 33, Christ was judged for my works. I won't be judged according to my works.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be judged according to his works there at Calvary. That's
Wow.
why this is so great. That's why a lot of people that don't understand this, they say, you know, have I done enough to please the Lord? Well, you can never do enough, but Jesus Christ done enough to please the Father. And that's what I guess I'm trying to get across here. But these people here will be that rejected whatever atonement that was given for them in their age. Today, if you reject the gospel of Christ, you are rejecting the atonement God has placed for you in this present hour. You will be judged according to your works because you said, I don't want Jesus' works for my account. So I guess that's all, I'm going to have to be judged on my own stature.
Amen,
and this
brother.
is what's going to happen to you in verse 14. Death and hell, this place, that means all these people here, will be cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. It's horrible to die the first death without Christ. You're going to suffer the second death forever. Okay? That's why this is so important. That's why Jesus Christ went to the cross to fix this situation. Okay? To conquer Satan, to conquer Lucifer, and to make a way out. And it's like you said, there's a lot of people that preach hell. There's a lot of people in certain religious circles that preach hell, fire, and brimstone. Their way of getting you out of there is not the right way. They preach your own works of righteousness. Okay? All right, now let's go to excuse me, Matthew 25 and verse 41. Now, my next question is, I've shown you that Christ did go to hell for us. The next question is, evil, where or when did it begin? Okay, evil. We always have seen about stories about good and evil. Lord of the Rings is all about good versus evil and all of that stuff. And evil began in the universe with a rebellion against the order of God. And I don't know exactly the day that it took place, but it took back in times past. I'm just going to kind of give you some of my thoughts. It is said that Lucifer was the guardian of the throne of God and was involved in the praise and worship of God. There's some that believe this and some scripture to lead us in that direction. Somewhere along the line, he wanted more power and authority, as well as began to become proud and arrogant. This was rebuked by God, the Creator. And the created being, Lucifer, he wanted glory above the Creator God, and there was a rebellion. And it seems Lucifer was very persuasive. So much so that some of the other angelic hosts followed him in this falsehood. And like I said, hell was created to stop that rebellion. Okay, it was created for them. Now, to support that, in Matthew 25:41, Jesus is talking about at his second coming, he'll be dividing the sheep from the goats and all of that. And he will say to some people there that comes to him that said, Lord, look what great works we've done in thy name. And he says, then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for who? For the devil and his angels. Now, I keep pointing up here to this. To be more accurate, let me kind of erase this here. And let's just draw a lake of fire here. And Mr. Larkins loved to draw little pictures to illustrate. But he really helped me a whole lot just trying to get my head around something.
Get that mental picture.
To see a mental picture of a lake of fire that was created for who? Lucifer and the angels that rebelled against God. It was never intended for the souls of man. But when I think about evil, if you look up the word, it means a malicious intent to harm. Harm, whether it be harming you physically or spiritually, okay? And that's basically what evil is. It's taken on a lot of different definitions down through the years that maybe kind of, like I said, Charles Manson. We think of evil in those terms, but evil is anything that would harm you or hurt you. All right, now let's go to John chapter 8 and verse 44. This evil stems from an arrogance. He believed a falsehood, a lie, that he was greater than God, or that he was somehow had a better understanding than the Creator. And of course we believe, the angels followed him and believe this too. Here in John chapter 8 and verse 4, the Lord is dealing with some people on the face of the earth called Pharisees and Sadducees. But I think here in particular he's dealing with some Pharisees. And they're trying to hem the Lord into a corner here and catch him on something. And he said, this is what he says to them. Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own. He is a liar and the father of it. And you look up that word father, it's the idea of an originator of something. All right? Now, let's go to Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 12. He originated this lie. He stepped outside. And it could be, I always wondered when it says he was a murderer from the beginning. I guess my understanding of that is once he taught some people or some creatures to stepping outside of the truth, that meant death, spiritual death for them. Okay? He basically murdered these people. And then, of course, he murdered all those that would follow him. So he meant death, whereas God is life and joy and righteousness and all of that. So that's, I think, what that means there. Now, here again, we've read this many times, but it's very applicable here. In Isaiah 14:12, talking about Lucifer, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars. He may have had a throne here, and I remember Tim mentioned something about it's very plausible he could have been over the earth at that time in that pre-Adamite creation. And he wanted to exalt his throne above the stars of God. And that phrase, the stars of God, is in reference to angelic hosts. I don't know if you know this or not, but there are dominions and authorities in the heavenly places. There are thrones and powers there. And obviously, he was going to say, hey, mine's going to be even above all of that. So this is what got him into trouble. It says, I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet, it says, yet thou shalt be brought down to hell into the sides of the pit. Here again, talking about hell and ultimately the lake of fire. This is where he will end up. Okay, now just in reference to those angels that followed him, let's go to 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 4. So, when you have stuff that goes on in your life, frustrating stuff, illness, stuff that goes on in your marriage, stuff that goes on at work that is contrary to your joy, contrary to a good peace of mind, guess what? It's because of these fallen angels and Lucifer that's contrary to your life. There is a thing set up there. Lucifer he wants to harm you. Okay, we're going to look at that in just a minute. He wants contrary to your joy, especially if you're saved. Okay, and if you're lost, he wants to get you so down that you just reject any kind of light and joy. But notice these angels, as I mentioned, for God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into the chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment. There's a future judgment for them. This is clear, and this also would be, I think, in reference to those angels that left their first estate there in Genesis chapter 6. They came into the daughters of men.
Yep.
This would be applicable to those individuals or angels. Okay. Okay. Let's go now. While we're in Peter, go to 1 Peter 5:8. Now I want to talk about in this idea of evil and a malicious intent to harm, to bring about chaos, to bring about pain and suffering on humanity. Peter, speaking about the devil, says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about," what? Seeking to make your life go smoothly? No. Seeking whom he may devour. That would be a lost person, to devour them in the sense that they would reject the only means of salvation, or if you're a saved person, to get you to your faith to be shipwrecked, so that you would just be sit on the sideline and give up, you know. And we've all kind of been there at some of those crossroads in our life where we were right there and we kept moving forward. That's why Paul says, when having done all to stand, stand therefore in this liberty. All right, now let's go to John chapter 10 and verse 10.
Go to where?
John chapter 10 and verse 10. This is the Lord talking about in reference to him being the Christ and having the door of opening. He is the door and the good shepherd and all of that, and that he is life and the bread of life. He talks about a thief, which is in reference to Satan. He says, "The thief, being Satan, cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy." He says, "I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly." That's why he went to the cross, and then he went into the lower parts of the earth, so that he could give you abundant life. Okay? But notice Satan is to steal. He's there to steal your life, keep you from getting everlasting life. And then if you have everlasting life, he's there to rob you of your joy, to kill and to destroy. And that's what he's all about. All right, let's go.
Quick question
Go ahead.
before you leave there. Going back to that passage you were just on, Jesus being the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. But he that is a hireling, what would the hireling be, you think?
I'm thinking, I have to look at the context.
Somebody that preaches for a paycheck.
Yeah.
Would be the hireling.
He's not in it. He's not really in it. He's just there to
It's a
pick
job.
up a paycheck.
Not in
It's a
it,
job.
win it.
Well, in support of that, if you look in the context of there and the Old Testament passages, why he says, "I'm the good shepherd." is because of the Old Testament there. It says, I will give them shepherds, but they will leave the flock or they'll just
cause the flock to scatter.
Yeah, they'll scatter the flock. And he's basically saying, I am the true shepherd. I'm here. Here I am. Okay, and here's proof of that. And then, of course, the hireling would be that would hire for money would be actually influenced by Satan and greed and all of that.
Like a substitute. Like a substitute.
Yes.
They're ministers of righteousness.
Right.
Satan's ministers.
Ministers of Satan, right.
Yeah.
So we've seen here that Satan, his harm is to undo what Christ has accomplished here. He's trying to undo this, okay, and he can undo it, but he's causing problems, and we experience on a daily basis. I don't know about you, but sometimes we all kind of get down mentally, okay? And, you can look at the news. Sometimes I can watch the news and I can say, that's just the world being the world. But other times you can look and see all the stuff and flip. It seems like you flip every channel and there's some sort of sorrow or evil or something that would just break you down. A lot of times I just have to cut the TV off and just get away from it, okay? Just get away from that and try to get my mind on, when Paul says, whatsoever is lovely, whatsoever things are honest, or of good report, think on these things. And I have to do that,
That's why we watch The Walking Dead.
That's right.
The Walking Dead. But in all honesty, this is basically what's going on. All right, now, let's go to Hebrews chapter 2 and verse 14. This is really good here. The world can be a depressing, frustrating place when you look at all the suffering and evil and sorrow and so forth. But notice what it says here about Christ, Hebrews 2:14. For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he, Christ, also himself likewise took part of the same, and that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is the devil. And he did that. He got those keys when he went down there. He destroyed. He's got the power and the authority now. And he's going to destroy death and the power of death. Why? Through resurrection. When we become changed, man, that will be the reality. And that's why Paul says, "O death, where is thy sting?" Okay? He's talking about, I think, through my Jesus Christ my Lord. And verse 15, and deliver them who through fear of death were all the lifetime subject to bondage. Don't you imagine that when Peter and them actually witnessed the resurrected Christ, their fear of death probably diminished a great deal that day, don't you think?
Yeah.
Their fear had fallen off, and that's what is being talked about here. And even though I haven't physically seen Christ, I know that he resurrected. I believe it just as sure as I'm standing here today. That's why I have no fear of death, because I've trusted in his death and resurrection for me. All right, let's go to...
So is this your Easter message?
Well, I hadn't even really thought about it, really.
Ishtar message.
Ishtar message. It would be a good one, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Let's go to 1 John chapter 3 and verse 8.
1 John chapter 3.
All right. Now, I want to kind of give you my illustration of this, but I also want to show you how somebody can misapply this verse and take a lost or a saved person and make them feel like they're lost again. But it says, he that committeth sin is of the devil, for the devil sinneth from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. And here's how he destroys the works of the devil. His works of righteousness here, going and fulfilling all that was accomplished, that was desired by the law, those great works of righteousness are placed to our account. We know this from the gospel. That's how he destroys the works of the devil, because when we trust in Christ, we gain access to his works of righteousness, and the works of the devil have no more bearing on us, okay? But notice here, somebody could say, he that committeth sin is of the devil. Now, I can just hear a preacher right now say, now look, you went to an R-rated movie. You're of the devil. You're of Satan. You need to quit doing that stuff and start getting on Jesus' side and all that. What he's saying here is to commit the sin of unbelief, to reject the gospel, is sin. And unbelief, that's the sin that's made reference to here. All right? All right, lastly, let's go finish up. We're going to Revelation chapter 12 and verse 7. And we're going to look at the future of evil and Lucifer here.
What did you say this time?
Revelation chapter 12 and verse 7. Quarter hour, about 40 minutes in.
41.
Okay. Now, we've seen this picture of the victorious Christ. He goes into the lower parts of the earth. He suffered shame and reproach. He was outcast. God the Father turned his back on him so that he could suffer that for us. We see him victorious, having keys of both death and hell. We see now Lucifer as this arrogant, harmful person wanting to rob and cause destruction on the face of the earth, and he has. Now we're going to see a future picture of this because the lake of fire was created for that purpose. And it says, and there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought his angels. And of course, the dragon is a reference to Lucifer here. And prevailed not, neither was there place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, the old serpent, called the devil and Satan. Now, there's all of his names in one little sentence there. Which deceiveth the whole world, and he was cast into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. This is pointing to a time where they will be cast out into the heavenlies and onto the earth. Now, in Revelation 20, verse 10, we know that he's going to be bound for 1,000 years and be kept at bay, and then he's going to be loosed again. And he's going to try to cause all sorts of problems. And he will. And, of course, the Lord will then exercise his authority and say in verse 10, and the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever for that suffering. That's the purpose of hell, was for Lucifer and them to be tormented day and night. In verse 14, death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And then, of course, a new heaven and a new earth will be created, and harmony will be restored. That's where, when Peter talks about the restitution of all things, looking down the long perspective, God is fixing all of this disharmony that was created. And that's the purpose of it. And so his death brings about that harmony. So I hope that maybe this will be a little encouragement to you. Maybe it'll be something that you are confused about hell. I know that there are people that listen to some of our videos that might be confused about some of these things, and hopefully we'll set some of them in order for you. But I am thankful. I've told this to Tim on a number of occasions when I've gone through some difficult things in my life. I look forward to the day where Lucifer is cast into that place, and there will be no more sorrow, no more pain, no more suffering and frustrating things that go on in their life. And so the positive note of that. So I thank y'all for coming and for your time and listening today.
There was this thing on Discovery Channel, and I was doing something else. I didn't get a chance to really sit down and watch it. I want to try it. It was about time and all these different philosophical and scientific concepts and these what is Sheldon? He's a what is Sheldon?
Physicist.
Experimental. But anyway, they had all these guys on there, and so they're thinking in times of eternity and millions and billions. But it was really interesting to watch it, and then putting it in perspective with the Bible. The one thing that they don't know about why time was even created, why there is time measurable by man, because none of this could happen. You would know, you couldn't preach what you preach today without it.
Right.
So, in theory, some of their theories about there really isn't time, and is true, and it's talking about the string theory.
Yes.
That is that we think of time as just a linear straight line, like take a power cord and you stretch it, but there's not really. It's got dimension to it, and it talks about how. But you stop to think, just like when Paul, or even the one they stoned there, Peter, Paul could see Stephen. He looks up and sees another period of time in this period of time, but he sees it as if it's real. When Paul sees the Lord, right? He's seeing the Lord in another dimension, right? So,
well, what I think talking about that is, like you and I are getting old in this, on this earth, in this time that we're constrained to. Yes, I'm connected by Christ to eternity. I have an eternal.
But you're also connected the other direction too.
Right.
We only think of time going forward, but the reality is, if he was before,
right,
he's the same.
Right.
So we're not just connected there.
Yeah, God sees us as our whole life from beginning to end.
We're connected both directions.
Right.
I would love to see one of these very scientific, experimental physiologists with string theory get saved and be able to then look at what he knows and see the Bible and then get his perception.
Well, some of these people probably could get saved if there wasn't so many dumb bunnies running around the world preaching this stuff that the earth was formed 6,000 years ago. And, there never was no dinosaurs, and
But once they understood, then they apply it. I think it would have a whole. Because I'm sitting there thinking what we know, but applying some of it. Scientists wanted to think of a Big Bang Theory 10 trillion years ago. Well, read the Bible. It was a Big Bang Theory. Boom! He spoke it. Bam! It was.
Yeah.
It was as big a bang as you could.
Great about dispensationalism really is an attempt.
You can understand.
To try to understand the time constraints God put on man in the various ages, because it is ages.
And it's very seldom, though, but science is constantly like a Big Bang Theory. It proves the Bible to me. It doesn't they explain it
out
wrong.
Of ignorance.
Out of ignorance. They go over there now and they start digging up. They find Solomon. They find Gomorrah, and they find Sodom. Oh my God, we found Jericho. Oh my God, So all of a sudden they're finding all this stuff.
Back to your message. That over there in 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 4, we're talking about the fallen angels. I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, the word hell right there in that verse is translated from Tartarus, which is a totally different compartment, totally different compartment from hell in the lower parts of the earth. And I don't believe that I believe these fallen angels were a part of the rebellion. I've heard this discussion between different people, and I've read different discussions on this topic, whether these fallen angels were actually those angels that left their first estate or not. Because, see, here's my thinking too on the angels that left their first estate and took on the form of humans. I believe that, while they were supernatural and had all of these supernatural powers and stuff that an angelic being would have, I still believe that they suffered death as a human.
Well, that's true, because once they took it, there's no turning back.
But as far as these fallen angels here in 2 Peter chapter 4, I've heard a lot of different, discussions on who those angels were.
Well, I agree with you. I remember you talking about that.
And that may very well be the angels that left their first estate. I don't know. I'm just saying I've heard a lot of different discussions on it.
It could be their spirits were restrained. I don't know.
But I think it's an interesting topic. To me, it's a very interesting topic. But you done a terrific job, by the way. I
You've been
enjoyed
doing
it.
a real good job lately on all.
Don't slow his head up.
You might be a real preacher, teacher, man. You might be a real gift.
I might be,
You're finally going